This is answer to Job, fact number 5, and the assignment covers paragraph 609 through 624. For again, there's one correction I want to point out to you on paragraph 616. The first sentence of that paragraph should read, "not from mere thoughtlessness." I have 7 items I want to comment on tonight. Number 1 is the most substantial one. It concerns the figure of wisdom, which Jung introduces us to in this assignment. This is a very major archetypal image, figure of wisdom. So it's something that you should be thoroughly familiar with, so that you'll recognize her when she shows up in dreams. I want to summarize briefly the historical evolution. Just as we can consider Yahweh to be the masculine personification of the collective unconscious, so we can consider wisdom to be the feminine personification of the collective unconscious. In the text where she shows up most prominently, she carries three chief names. I put them on the board. I use the original languages because the unconscious loves ancient languages. So that's one major reason that you find so much Greek and Latin in Jung's work. He knows that. He's telling us that fact. Sophia is her Greek form. Chakma is her Hebrew form, and Potentia Dei is her Latin form. He shows up first in Greek philosophy, dates for which we might put more or less arbitrarily at from about 600 to 300 BC. She's really the central image of Greek philosophers, so they even name themselves lovers of Sophia. They think of themselves as her lovers, and that's the word then that passed on into the Greek scriptures and into the Gnostic literature. The term Sophia. Then she is discussed in Proverbs that Jung quotes. Proverbs is a composite collection, but chapters 1 to 9, in which she's described, could perhaps be tentatively dated somewhere around 400 BC. Maybe a little earlier, but let's say for our purposes, 400 BC. Let me quote something from her, from Proverbs. I, wisdom, dwell with experience and judicious knowledge. Mine are counsel and advice. Mine is strength, understanding. By me kings reign and lawgivers establish justice. By me princes govern and nobles, all the rulers of the earth. Those who love me I also love. Those who seek me find me. With me are riches and honor. My fruit is better than gold. On the way of duty I walk, along the paths of justice. The Lord begot me, firstborn of his ways, the forerunner of his prodigies long ago. From of old I was poured forth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no fountains or springs of water, before the fountains were settled into place. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he made firm the skies above, when he fixed fast the foundations of the earth. When he set for the sea its limit, so that the waters could not transgress his command. Then I was beside him as his craftsman. I was his delight day by day, playing before him all the while. Playing on the surface of his earth, and I found delight in the sons of men. That's how she's described in Proverbs. Around about the same time comes the Song of Songs, let's say dated somewhere between 500 and 400 BC. Wisdom is not specifically referred to there, but the Shulamite is later identified with Sophia, so that the Song of Songs becomes a major wisdom text for that reason. So that the whole drama of the Shulamite and her lover corresponds to the perpetual love play of the Hieros Gamos that goes on between Yahweh and Sophia. And then coming along in time, next comes Ecclesiasticus, which is also called the Wisdom of Jesus ben Sirach. That is one of the books of the Apocrypha. It's found in the Greek Hebrew scriptures, and that's one of the advantages of using either the Jerusalem Bible or the New American Bible. Since they're Catholic versions, they include the Apocrypha. And Ecclesiasticus, we can date approximately 200 BC. And wisdom is discussed chiefly in chapters 1, 4, and 24 of Ecclesiasticus. Jung quotes one passage. He quotes a passage from chapter 24 in which wisdom associates herself to a tree. Another passage of Ecclesiasticus that I'm particularly fond of is found in chapter 4 of Ecclesiasticus, in which we read this. Wisdom instructs her children and admonishes those who seek her. He who loves her loves life. Those who seek her out win her favor. He who holds her fast inherits glory. Wherever he dwells, the Lord bestows blessing. Those who serve her serve the Holy One. Those who serve her the Lord loves. He who obeys her judges nations. He who hearkens to her dwells in her innermost chambers. If one trusts her, he will possess her. His descendants too will inherit her. She walks with him as a stranger, and at first she puts him to the test. Fear and dread she brings upon him, and tries him with her discipline. With her precepts she puts him to the proof, until his heart is fully with her. Then she comes back to bring him happiness and reveal her secrets to him. Next wisdom text is the wisdom of Solomon. Sometimes it's just called wisdom, and sometimes it's called wisdom of Solomon. This is another one of the books of the Apocrypha, and this one dates about 50 BC. In her is a spirit, intelligent, holy, unique, manifold, subtle, agile, clear, unstained, certain, loving the good, keen, unhampered, beneficent, kindly, firm, secure, tranquil, all-powerful, all-seeing, and pervading all spirits, so they be intelligent, pure, and very subtle. For wisdom is mobile beyond all motion. She penetrates and pervades all things by reason of her purity. She is an aura of the mighty God. She who is one can do all things and renews everything, while herself perduring and passing into holy souls from age to age, she produces friends to gods and prophets. Next in this unfolding in time comes the Gnostic literature, which we can date, say, approximately from 100, 300 AD. According to this literature, Sophia is one of the eons in the Pleroma who falls into matter. She becomes enamored of matter and succumbs to its embrace, and then has to be rescued. The legend of the Gnostic Simon Magus is a kind of prototype of the Gnostic. According to that legend, Simon Magus discovered Sophia reincarnated as a version of Helen of Troy in a brothel in Tyre. That's how she had fallen into matter. And he rescued her from the brothel in Tyre and made her his partner. So what we have there is an amalgam of the divine Sophia on the one hand and Helen of Troy on the other hand. So what's actually done in that legend is to unite the two strains of Scripture, the Greek strain and the Hebrew strain. The Greek Scripture, of course, being the Iliad, in which Helen of Troy was a central figure. Then, moving along, medieval philosophy picked up the figure of what it now called Sapientia Dei, and she became a major figure around which speculation gathered, and she was considered to be the eternal forms out of which God created the world. So she embodied all the eternal Platonic ideas. out of which the world was created. Then finally comes Sophia, or Sapientia, as she showed up in alchemy. You may remember from the Mysterium class that we had a text that involved the Shulamite. I am dark but comely, and the Shulamite was asking to be rescued. She was a personification of the prima materia, seeking to be rescued by the alchemist. That's another version of Sophia caught in the dark embrace of matter, requiring rescue. And the outstanding alchemical example of Sophia, or Sapientia Dei text, is the text, the Aurora Consurgens, which von Franz has edited and given us a magnificent commentary on. I consider Aurora Consurgens von Franz's finest work. Let me read to you just a paragraph of of her commentary. The whole alchemical text concerns the Sapientia Dei and its redemption. And here's the way von Franz begins her commentary. The first chapter introduces a mystical female figure who appears at first as the personified Sapientia Dei. This feminine divine hypostasis is painted on a broad canvas and is amplified by numerous biblical sayings and comparisons. At first, it's the same personification we see in Proverbs, Ecclesiasticus, and Wisdom of Solomon. In the patristic literature, she was mostly interpreted as Christ, the pre-existent Logos, or as the sum of the eternal forms of the self-knowing primordial causes, exemplars, or prototypes in the mind of God. She was also considered the archetypus mundus, the archetypal world, after whose likeness this sensible world was made, and through which God becomes conscious of himself. Sapientia Dei is thus the sum of archetypal images in the mind of God. So that's a kind of brief summary of how Sophia has showed up in the collective Western psyche in its traditional material. Now let me move to item number 2. This item comes from paragraph 616. Where we read, "From the ancient records, we know that the divine drama was enacted between God and his people, who were betrothed to him, the masculine dynamis, like a woman, and over whose faithfulness he watched jealously." So we have here the image of Yahweh as the husband, and Israel as the wife. And Job then becomes the individual personification of Israel. And Yahweh treats Job the way a jealous husband treats the wife, putting her to the test, see if she really is faithful to him. And this brings up a whole series of analogies between the image of the marriage relationship and the ego-self relation. The Yahweh is husband, Israel is wife. Israel is functioning as a kind of collective ego. And Yahweh represents the self. Now, you may remember from Ion that Jung stated that the anima or animus can be realized only through a relation to a partner of the opposite sex, because only in such a relation do their projections become operative. Now, the same idea can be applied to the psychology of Yahweh as it unfolds, as Jung unfolds it, you see. He had a consort. His consort was Sophia, but he forgot about it, or more precisely, he never really knew it. And so just as the ego, in order to become conscious of contrasexual other, has to go through a real encounter in a relationship with the opposite sex, so does Yahweh have to, in order to encounter and become conscious of his other. His other is something mortal and temporal. He's eternal and immortal, but his other is mortal and temporal, and he needs that other in order to become conscious of his inner contrary. Now, as you reflect on the implications of this analogy between the marriage relationship and the relationship between the ego and the self, you then realize that Jung's fine essay on marriage as a psychological relationship, which is in volume 17, can be transferred almost completely to the ego-self relationship. Almost everything he says about marriage as a psychological relationship applies also to the relation between the ego and the self. He says there that at the beginning of such a marriage relationship, there's a high degree of unconscious identification between the marriage partners. And only very gradually does their relationship evolve into a conscious relation between separate individuals, separate conscious individuals. And he says about that seldom or never does a marriage develop into an individual relation smoothly or without crises. There's no birth of consciousness without pain. Those are Jung's words. Well, certainly the same thing applies to the ego-self relation. One has to go through experiences of divorces and alienations and loss of connection to the God image in order for the ego's relation to itself to finally evolve into something conscious rather than something unconscious and in a state of ego-self identity. There's another idea which I think is a particularly productive and helpful idea that Jung elaborates in this essay on marriage as a psychological relationship. That's the idea of the container and the contained. He says in every relationship, one of the partners will be more or less contained in the other. Let me read a few remarks he makes about this phenomenon, because it's this particular concept, I think, is an important tool in our analytic toolkit of understanding. The one who feels who is contained feels himself to be living entirely within the confines of the marriage. His attitude to the partner is undivided. The unpleasant side, of course, is the disquieting dependence upon a personality that can never be seen in its entirety. The container, on the other hand, will miss all the subtleties and complexities that would correspond to his own facets, and he's both disturbing to the other's simplicity, and also is left dissatisfied because his complexity cannot be mirrored by the simplicity of the contained one. The simpler nature works on the more complicated one like a room that's too small, does not allow him enough space. Complicated nature, on the other hand, gives the simpler one too many rooms with too much space, so that he never knows exactly where he really belongs. And then Jung goes on to say, it usually happens that sooner or later, the one functioning as the container, who is satisfied, starts looking around, looks out the window elsewhere to see if he might find somebody so that he could get a little containment too. See, that all applies to the ego-self relation. The ego, of course, is the smaller, simpler, contained entity, and the self is the container. And as long as that situation pertains, as long as it prevails, then a Job event will never happen, because he will hearken to his counselors. Counselors express the state of containment, and that's what they inform Job. You're smaller than Yahweh, Job, so you're a contained one. Accept that situation. And it's because Job did not accept that situation that, to a slight extent at least, he turns the tables on Yahweh, and in one respect, for one moment at least, man becomes the ego becomes the container, and the self the container. Okay, going on to the next item number 3. This derives also from paragraph 16. Jung says that Yahweh projects his own tendency to unfaithfulness upon a scapegoat. There is reason to suspect that he is about to loosen his matrimonial ties with Israel, but he hides this intention from himself. Yahweh, like a jealous husband, is preoccupied with the possibility of his wife's infidelity. That state of affairs is illustrated very vividly in the 3rd chapter of Jeremiah. This is Yahweh talking. If a man sends away his wife, and after leaving him she marries another man, does the first husband come back to her? Would not the land be wholly defiled? You have sinned with many lovers, and yet you would return to me, says the Lord. Lift your eyes to the heights and see, where have men not lain with you? By the waysides you waited for them like an Arab in the desert. You defiled the land by your wicked harlotry. Therefore the showers were withheld, the spring rain failed. But because you have a harlot brow, you refuse to blush. The Lord said to me in the days of King Josiah, see now what rebellious Israel has done. She has gone up every high mountain and under every green tree. She has played the harlot. And I thought after she had done all this, she would return to me, but she did not return. Then, even though her traitor sister Judah saw that for all the adulteries rebellious Israel had committed, I put her away and gave her a bill of divorce. Nevertheless, her traitor sister Judah was not frightened. She too went off and played the harlot. Eager to sin, she polluted the land, committing adultery with stone and wood. So it's laid out very explicitly. You see, in our clinical terminology, Yahweh has an infidelity complex. We encounter this situation. It's not so uncommon, where it can be either a man or a woman that becomes convinced that the spouse is being unfaithful. Jung tells us the reason for that in paragraph 620. He says, Yahweh had lost sight of his plurimatic coexistence with Sophia since the days of the creation, and her place was taken by the covenant with the chosen people who were thus forced into the feminine role. So what Yahweh is up to is he is entertaining the prospects of being unfaithful to Israel in order to have a relationship with Sophia. But from what was said earlier, we can consider that the relation with Israel, kind of projection of the feminine consort, was a necessary step in Yahweh's becoming conscious of Sophia. That just as the human ego must integrate the anima via projection, via an experience with a living partner of the opposite sex, so Yahweh must also have that experience, have the external love relationship with Israel, and then later withdraw the projection. The infidelity complex is a kind of unconscious expression of the fact that he's going to turn from a projected relationship to his consort to a conscious, direct relationship to Sophia herself. And so that anticipated infidelity is then projected onto Israel. And the same thing applies to the individual caught in the infidelity complex. What's called for is the realization that the individual does indeed need to be partially unfaithful, in quotes, to the external partner in order to have a relationship with the inner consort, the anima or animus. And believe me, that often is experienced by the partner as an infidelity. Okay, item number 4. This comes from paragraph 617. Whoever knows God has an effect on him. This sentence epitomizes the entire book. It's, I'd say, the most important single sentence in the book. And for that reason, I've put it up in its original German to emphasize this is how Jung formulated it. He formulated it in German. Whoever knows God acts upon him. I don't think we can overestimate what a revolutionary and profound fact and discovery is expressed by this simple sentence. I think this is how psychotherapy works. That as the analyst sees and knows the nature of the unconscious of the patient, as the analyst is able to perceive the abysmal world of shards that resides in the unconscious of the patient, as the analyst is able to get behind it, see it, so to speak, that having been seen has an effect. Naturally, it's our task to communicate verbally what we see to the patient. But even outside an explicit communication, the having been seen acts on the unconscious of the patient. I don't ask you to take that as dogma. I ask you to take it as a hypothesis and consider it in your work and see if it's verified. I think very often it is. Of course, naturally, we can't verify it all the time because sometimes the mills of God grind rather slowly. But it's a very important principle of developing consciousness. Also, I think this insight is of such fundamental importance to the collective that this single sentence is enough to create a whole new eon, the Jungian eon. Item number 5 comes from paragraph 619. Jung says, if the original father, Adam, is a copy of the Creator, his son, Cain, is a copy of God's son, Satan, and this gives us good reason for supposing that God's favorite, Abel, must also have his correspondence in the supercelestial place. See, the idea here, then, is that Adam as a prototype of the ego, is made in God's image, and therefore, if Adam has two sons, that means if he's following the divine pattern, then Yahweh also has two sons. It's Jung's point that only one son became visible at first, Cain's son, namely Satan, but the Abel's son is going to show up shortly, Christ's son. And another parallel between Yahweh and Adam is that they both had two wives. Jung says the original man who was created in the image of God had, according to tradition, two wives just like his heavenly prototype. And Yahweh's two wives are Israel and Sophia. So just as the self has two wives, the ego has two wives. I think what that refers to, the two wives of the ego are the outer partner and the inner partner. You know, we often encounter a situation where a man is caught between two women, or a woman is caught between two men. There's a certain kind of psychology that's chronically getting into triangles of that sort. One way we describe it as a split animon. Another way of describing it is that it's an exteriorization of the two wives archetype. One of those women ought to be inside, you see. And when one's inside, then one is enough outside. But when one is in the process of discovering the second inner one, it very often happens that life gets complicated by two. And the same thing applies then to the self. The self has two wives. The ego is the outer wife of the self, and the eternal consort is the inner wife of the self. And that would correspond in biblical terminology then to Israel is the outer wife of Yahweh, and Sophia is the inner consort of Yahweh. Okay, I'll stop with that.